Hey, all. Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Last night, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in York, Pennsylvania, and I was reminded of a story that I wrote a couple of years ago involving this Confederate general, Jubal Early, and that day in late June 1863, June 28th to be exact, just before the Battle of Gettysburg, when Early and his troops entered and occupied York, accepting the surrender of the town from the leading authorities. There came a moment when Jubal Early made a request for supplies and money. The townspeople and the general gathered in a courtroom in the middle of town and listened to General Early make his request. The committee of townspeople met with him, and the history of York County tells the tale, tells their side of the story. Here's what they remember from General Early's request. He reportedly said, "I have taken possession of your town by authority of the Confederate government. My soldiers are tired and worn out. They need food and they need clothing. My soldiers are under strict discipline. They are not permitted to destroy private property or harm any citizens. Guards have been placed around all public buildings and hotels. Saloons and beer shops have been closed. You are living in a land of plenty and have not suffered from the results of war like my own countrymen down in Virginia. I want my requisitions filed at once. If you do not comply with my demands, I will take the goods and provisions from your stores or permit my soldiers to enter your houses and demand such things as they need for assistance." The condition of the people at this time, noted the historian, was one of the greatest suspense. They did not know what demands he would make. Well, that requisition was a long one. All kinds of food, plus socks, boots, and $100,000 in cash. U.S. currency, not Confederate, only greenbacks would be accepted. So the story goes, so the historian tells it, Early then retired from the room and went to his headquarters. Before the meeting adjourned, a number of leading citizens were appointed to pass through the streets of town and solicit all the money, provisions, and wearing apparel that could be obtained. And that same afternoon, this committee turned over to the quartermaster the entire requisition for commissary and clothing that General Early had demanded. Early expressed himself satisfied with what they had done and commended them for their promptness. But there was an exception. They could only raise $28,000 of the $100,000 that he had demanded. This did not satisfy the general, but the committee that had collected all those goods were permitted to return to their homes, and the commissary sent the supplies to the troops, which were encamped around the public common and the fair ground. The meat, so a large quantity of meat that was requested, was cooked over large open fires. You can smell, almost get a sense of the smell of that meat wafting through the air around town. A bakery was opened in one of the buildings of a United States hospital, which had been recently occupied by 500 Union soldiers. They had been evacuated. All the soldiers partook of a hearty supper, so the story goes. Now, there was still the question of the cash. With only $28,000 being raised, they were quite a bit short. Early was not happy. The general sent for the head judge of York County and reportedly said, "I want all the keys to the courthouse." This is what apparently Early stated in commanding terms, said the historian. "For what purpose?" asked the judge. "To burn the county records," Early said. The judge replied, "That would be barbarous. You promised that you would not destroy private property. These records are essential for future use and should not be burned. Early retorted, I want to burn them as an act of retaliation because the Federal Army some time ago burned all the deeds and records in the courthouse at Fairfax, Virginia. Now, at this point, the judge made an earnest appeal to the soldier standing in front of him, begging that he should desist from this intention and leave the records of York County and the courthouse alone. His appeal did produce an effect upon General Early, who paused and said, "Is there any property then in York that is contraband of war?" "Nothing that I know of," dryly replied the judge, "except some cigars made out of Pennsylvania tobacco raised in York County." The historian pointed out, as the reputation of Pennsylvania cigars, generally known in that day as Toby's, was not very good, General Early shrugged his shoulders and said, "No, I think we will not rob you of them." Early, unsatisfied, threatened then to burn railroad cars. But fate intervened when he received orders from his commanding officer, General Robert E. Lee, of the Situation General Hooker's army. Soon to be General Meade's army was on the move, and so the Confederates needed also to be on the move. Early and his men departed York on June 30th for Gettysburg. They were well fed, reasonably well supplied, but without that full $100,000 in currency. Oh, there is one more thing. Early left behind a farewell address. And here it is. To the citizens of York, I've abstained from burning the railroad buildings and car shops of your town because after examination I am satisfied the safety of the town would be endangered. And acting in the spirit of humanity, which has ever characterized my government and its military authorities, I do not desire to involve the innocent in the same punishment with the guilty. Had I applied the torch without regard to consequences, I would have pursued a course that would have been fully vindicated as an act of just retaliation for the many authorized acts of barbarity perpetrated by your own army upon our soil. But we do not war upon women and children, and I trust the treatment you have met with at the hands of my soldiers will open your eyes to the monstrous inequity of the war waged by your government upon the people of the Confederate States, and that you will make an effort to shake off the revolting tyranny under which it is parent to all you yourselves groaning. J. A. Early, Major General, CSA. So there you have it. General Jubal Early, the capture of York, and his disinterest in Pennsylvania cigars. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.